Okay, we are going to move quickly along, and I just want to introduce Kristi Taylor, who is our JCMH Executive Director. But I want to take this opportunity to thank her and her staff for this conference. These conferences don't run smoothly by accident. It takes an enormous amount of work on all sides. And being that we all know Kristi, I'm going to skip the introduction that was written for her and turn it over to her. Kristi.
Thank you, Judge Spisha and everyone. Okay, I'm going to take a moment of privilege and do something different. We had 30 minutes scheduled to talk about a JCMH project that I'm very proud of. It was a great project, but something extraordinary happened yesterday. I was in a breakout session and I heard a lifetime prosecutor say, because of this session, I'm going to completely see things differently. I'm going to work with families differently. So I also just have such a talented staff that Rose made a video explaining the county mental health law plan so well that I think I can show the 5-minute video and hand the rest of my time over to this breakout speaker so that the bigger group can hear from her. So if you will hang with me on that, I will tell you I very much appreciate the 8 counties who participated in the county mental health law plan. Oh, this is the video coming up. And really, if any of you have had SIM mapping, what we noticed at JCMH is that we focus on resources and prevention, which we absolutely should. That comes first. But we, in the SIM mapping, don't really get to the legal process. We don't usually have time to talk about, are we streamlining how we're running emergency detention? Are we communicating about when someone comes back from state hospital and we are making sure to prioritize those cases so that they don't start over and decompensate again? So we developed the County Mental Health Law Plan. It's a checklist. It's a chance to do a self-analysis, get some education, and then work with us in a personalized workshop. The project will continue. I really appreciate the first 8 counties because, you know, it's bumpy when you try something new. But I do think we're the first in the nation, so these first 8 counties need to be honored for that. So let's play the video, and then I will introduce the speaker I'm going to give the rest of my time to. At the Texas Judicial Commission on Mental Health, we know that judges, attorneys, and other county leaders want to see the legal system improve how they respond to people with mental illness, intellectual disability, and substance use disorders. However, the mental health laws are complex. They're scattered across the civil and criminal code, and they are not well known. So we want to support judges. We know they wear a lot of hats. We want to bring together their communities to help them enhance their accountability and ensure that these processes are streamlined. The JCMH created the County Mental Health Law Plan to provide counties with checklists so that they could do a self-analysis on how they're doing on mental health laws. Next, we provide legal education on these laws and follow that up with individualized workshops that go in and help a county assess where they're doing things really well and where they may need more coordination. After the workshop, counties receive a report with recommendations and innovative ideas. Ultimately, the goals of this program are to improve the fair and timely administration of justice, to enhance community safety, to save our counties money, and to ensure that all Texans receive just and compassionate treatment.
My jurisdiction on the criminal cases is misdemeanors, and what I would see is people come in on criminal trespass, criminal mischief sometimes. They're sitting in jail. We appoint an attorney for them. They cannot negotiate with their attorney. Pleas cannot be entered. There was nothing to do with them. And you would see those. They would come into court. I would talk to them, and I could tell they didn't even know what was going on. And that's when I decided we had to figure out something better than what we were doing.
We had a very good turnout. I believe we had close to 40 individuals show up. That included the county judge, our DA, several defense attorneys, and just a lot of partners who sometimes don't sit at the same table. At the beginning of the day, it felt like it was kind of guarded. But as we got into the education pieces and communicating about the laws, and showing them the Judicial Commission on Mental Health kind of roadmap, I think that helped everyone kind of relax a little bit and realize that we were on the same team.
It's very clear we all want to provide the best care for someone in a mental health crisis. It's very difficult and painful for someone to have to go through that. And combine that with the judicial system, we want to make sure people are safe and getting care. So today, one of the main things that we covered was emergency detention, transportation, and ways we can work together to move forward to overcome some of those barriers that maybe we didn't realize they were there, or maybe we didn't realize how big that they were.
The next steps are to research, get those specialty courts done, get a mental health officer certified, and then start from there and get possibly every law enforcement officer certified as a mental health officer, and get those collaborations going to get the services to our citizens that they so desperately need.
I mean, I'm gonna call the gaps we identified, the questions we identified as successes, because until we dialogued, we didn't know what we didn't know. So it's an opportunity to educate, to train. It's an opportunity to address the legislature, to do some fixes that we think create some problems in a local mental health process or system.
I would love for us to be able to take those points that we learned today that maybe we aren't exemplary and work on those for 6 months and come back in this room again with the same people and be able to say, we fixed those gaps.
I think that the plan will be a great roadmap for us as we move forward. Burnett County is growing rapidly. And so we do recognize the fact that things are going to change just as rapidly as our growth is going to change. And so it's a roadmap for the future that we'll need to just stay on top of and make sure that we're updating at all times to stay current.
I'm just very grateful to the Judicial Commission on Mental Health for being a part of and a partner with different counties in the state, especially our county. They've been extremely supportive, and we really appreciate all their advice, their information that they provide, and the help that they have given us in being able to improve and find ways to serve the community at large.
Okay, so yeah. So I'll tell you, it's a great project. It was a wonderful experience with those counties, and every single county learned at least one thing new, I know. So go to our website, check out that project, and we will continue to report to you on that. So switching gears, I want to tell you about Jerri Clark. She is a family resource and advocacy expert at Treatment Advocacy Center. She was sharing this information in the session yesterday, and I told you I saw this transformation happen with a county attorney. So she's gracious enough to work her 40-minute presentation into a 20-minute presentation right now, and she agreed to this last night during the networking hour. So thank you so much, Jerri Clark.
Good morning. When my son was a baby, after I sang him to sleep, I would watch him sleep, and I would whisper to him, "You are so important." I wish that what I envisioned for him had become the way that he was important to this world. But instead, I'm charged with bringing the importance of his too short life to the world. And I deeply appreciate this opportunity to share what I learned in the hardest way possible with all of you who are doing this very important and difficult work. So I hope that after what I have to share with you today, you think about families families like mine, every single time you encounter a person with severe mental illness who was somebody's baby, who was incredibly important, and what happened to that family may not be obvious in the moment of crisis that you might be working with, but I hope that you remember what you heard from me here today and remember that somebody loved that baby, and that's who needs to come back to us and live the life that they were intended to live with support and help. My work is dedicated to my son, Calvin. I am a resource and advocacy manager at the national nonprofit Treatment Advocacy Center, which is the only national nonprofit committed to eliminating barriers to treatment for individuals with the most severe and persistent severe mental illness conditions. We define severe mental illness as schizophrenia spectrum disorders, the most severe forms of bipolar disorder, and depression illnesses that include psychosis. Most of the individuals with SMI have symptoms of psychosis and also symptoms of anosognosia. And I was super excited to hear the term anosognosia already in this morning's sessions. My son had anosognosia. He was at his worst, unable to recognize that he had an illness or understand why people were offering him help. Because of that illness, our family was broken apart. And because systems were not built to acknowledge anosognosia as a symptom of illness, we were forced to step back and stand down in order for him to fail and fall through every crack in the system before anything would become available to him. In my work at TAC, I help to manage a national helpline. So I talk to families and individuals, although it is usually families calling, across the country who are attempting to navigate these very disjointed and under-resourced systems. Most of these families have loved ones who are either incarcerated, homeless, missing, recovering from a suicide attempt, or barricaded in a back room or basement in the family home, completely confused about why their lives are no longer working. These families are trying everything they can to help their loved ones find a pathway to recovery. But often these families are told to wait until things get worse. So I want to share a little bit more about my son, Calvin. Calvin had a stable, middle-class upbringing. He got good grades, exceptional grades. He played soccer and swam. We surfed and camped on the Oregon coast, where this picture was taken. He had Tourette's syndrome from the age of 6, but he overcame that hurdle and was a state champion in extemporaneous speech during his happy high school years. We had no idea what was coming for us when he went off to college with an excellent scholarship. Halfway through his freshman year, Calvin developed a psychotic illness. He came home in a raging panic, convinced that demons were chasing him. His eyes were wild, and he rarely slept. The question I want to ask every stakeholder starts here. What would you do if this happened in your family? What would you expect in terms of help? Would you expect to be told that your loved one would need to get much, much sicker, get evicted, lose every job, be homeless, try suicide, go to jail, and that you would have no say in any of it while waiting to see if help would ever arrive. What's most disturbing about my story is that it's not unusual at all. At first, our family thought that love and teamwork would prevail. Nope. Providers cautioned us to step back and stand down while our son's worsening delusions and paranoia turned him against us. Psychosis wasn't illegal, they explained. He would need to break the law to be considered for most services. Let him fail, they said. It's the only way for an illness this severe. It took a while, but we eventually understood that our whole family was at risk from a system that was built to punish, not to help. In my work with Helpline, I had a Texas parent say to me recently that her son with schizophrenia has been crying out for help for years and keeps being denied by programs that say his condition is too acute. No one can point to a program that is actually built for him. This Texas mom said to me, "There's no care in healthcare." Another Texas parent described how even law enforcement refused to intervene when there was an imminent threat of harm in his household. Instead, officers sought ways to charge family members for circumstances caused by their loved one's untreated illness. "It's not just terrible," this dad said to me. "It's normal down here." A mom elsewhere was told to give up on her son and spend her resources to admit herself into a psychiatric facility. She was told that there she would learn to disconnect and heal. I was shocked, this mom said, how condescending and unhelpful many professionals were. Another parent once told me that a provider said to her, "Why do you even care anymore? Your daughter doesn't want to have anything to do with you." She knew that her daughter's disconnect was related to untreated psychosis, not lack of love. I wish these stories were shocking exceptions, but I chose them because they are so typical. They match what happened to my family. My son Calvin died from suicide when he was 23, about 5.5 years ago, after 4 years of unhelpful hospitalizations, incarcerations, competency restoration, homelessness, and emotional devastation. I learned a new term from a podcast called Lost Patients. That ineffective and expensive revolving door is called the churn. Caught in the churn, Calvin never had a chance. I'm here today in his honor, and the insight that I most want you to absorb is why talking to and listening to families like mine is in everyone's best interests. So how many of you are now just learning the term anosognosia? Be honest. Awesome. Awesome. Two things I really, really, really want you to learn in this moment. The first is you have to understand anosognosia to understand this population and how law and policy have to include the reality of this symptom. Anosognosia is not a choice. It is a neurological, brain-based symptom that disables a person's self-awareness that they have an illness condition. So it makes rational sense for the person experiencing the symptom to say, I'm not sick, I don't need help. Even when it is intensely obvious to everyone looking at this person's life from the outside that they have something going terribly wrong in their perception of the world and their place in it. This is why we have treatment laws and systems to care for people who are too sick to care for themselves. We must have laws and systems in place that acknowledge this symptom of anosognosia in a humane and compassionate way. So when families know that their loved one is experiencing anosognosia, we are often shut out and told that our information is not important or useful because all the system wants to see is a snapshot of this person in a moment. But we know the true baseline of our loved one, and we know that they're not home right now. There's a really interesting case that happened in my town. I live in Vancouver, Washington, which is right across the Columbia River from Portland, Oregon. And I got a call from a New York Times reporter who was doing an article about this young man with paranoid schizophrenia who had fallen through every crack in the system. And she wanted to talk to me because she was curious what I thought about the plan going forward, which was going to be to put this young man in a housing first apartment and not require any adherence to any kind of mental health treatment. So I sat down with this reporter and I said, here's how this is gonna go. So back up just a tiny bit. So this young man was so paranoid and so delusional that he was building himself a protective suit of armor out of takeout containers. Plastic takeout containers. And he was almost done. He had the bodysuit pretty ready to go. And he was really excited to explain to this reporter that he was gonna take this bodysuit with him to his new apartment to protect him from, I think, the alien laser beams or something like that. And I said, okay, so that's pretty sick. This young man is really sick, so nobody's gonna require him to take medication. There's no treatment plan that he's beholden to. Nope, housing first. We're gonna house him, and then he's gonna realize that we're all here to help. I said, here's how this is gonna go. He's either going to almost starve to death, die of dehydration, burn the place down, or get evicted. And thankfully, what happened is he was about to get evicted after about 6 to 8 weeks. In this location, destroyed the place, absolutely destroyed this apartment. So he's getting evicted, no big surprise. But what is a real head scratcher for me is he had actually assaulted a family member and been through a criminal court process in which they considered mental health court, which could have held him to a treatment plan. He was denied from mental health court because the referral process determined that he was not willing to acknowledge his diagnosis. So he was denied mental health court for the exact same symptoms that made him eligible for mental health court. And we have catch-22s like that throughout the system. But part of the reason I bring it into my conversation today is that the family tried everything to get that program to understand their son. He has anosognosia. He will not acknowledge his illness because he can't. His brain is not capable of acknowledging that he has schizophrenia. Sorry, our program is not equipped to serve someone with that going on. So we have to really pay attention to how our systems are rigged against the individuals who need them the most. In my presentation yesterday, I think I surprised a few folks by presenting some content on HIPAA. HIPAA is not the barrier that it has been taught to be. My clinician friends explain how HIPAA was taught to them as this menacing cloud of threat that if they accidentally talk to the family, they're going to lose their license. It's not true. And if you go to my presentation slides that are included in the conference packet, there are some resources that you can look at that dispute misunderstandings around HIPAA, including the HHS guidance portal that includes a frequently asked question: does HIPAA allow providers to talk to family? The answer is yes. But I can't tell you how many families I work with who are told by providers, by defense attorneys, and others working in the system, I can't even listen to you because I don't have a signed release of information. It's not true, but it's happening all the time across the country. So I hope that you will invest in deeper learning about what HIPAA privacy rule actually allows. But most of all, I want you to always think of the family first. We did a listening session, TAC, Treatment Advocacy Center, did a listening session at our AOT symposium in San Antonio 2 years ago. And we asked families what they most want providers to know. And the big key takeaway was, we want everyone in the system to know that we are allies and we want to problem solve with the system to make life better for our loved ones. We want to stop being blamed and shamed. We want to stop being shut out, and we want them to think of us first. A New York study of inpatients a few years ago found that 92% of psychiatric inpatients wanted their loved ones involved in their care planning. How many of you believe that 92% of psychiatric cases are engaging with families? It's upside down. It's probably about 8%. It's completely upside down. The American Psychiatric Association includes family engagement as a best practice. Raise your hand if you knew that. The American Psychiatric Association includes family engagement as a best practice. There's not enough data, but all of the data that there is indicates that outcomes improve when family are involved. There is a knowledge practice gap in the system that has, partly because of some errors in psychiatric theory in the past century, blamed families instead of recruiting them as allies. We're here for life. Our families are here for life. Care partners are going to touch someone's life for a brief moment in time, but we're here for the long term. I want to finish with a brief story. During one of my son's incarcerations, I got to know the psychiatric nurse practitioner. I knew my son was deeply psychotic and delusionally believed that I was a witch working with evil forces against him. I knew he wouldn't sign a release of information because of his confusion and paranoia. I told the psychiatric nurse practitioner, I'm not asking you for confidential information. I want to tell you some things I know about my son that I think might help. My son is a surfer. If you start talking to my son about surfing, he's going to go to a different place in his head, and you're going to talk to a very different young man. So he did. He got my son talking about, my son was almost catatonic. He was so ill during this incarceration, refusing medication, thought it was poisonous. The psych NP talked to him about surfing, and then he said, "You mind if I talk to your mom?" "Oh, you should totally talk to my mom. She's a surfer too. I always call her when I'm in trouble. Here's her phone number." He signed a release of information, and he started taking medication. Because that nurse practitioner talked to me and learned something about my son that broke through the psychosis for just a moment in time so that he could do his job well. Thank you for listening. Thank you for including families in the work that you do.